morning, because I honestly think like veganism and vegetarianism is I won't say becoming more popular, because it's always um been there, but I think there was more of a time about 2-3 years ago where people were being really encouraged. There was a lot of stuff in the media and marketing. Whether I've just, I don't know, stopped tuning into it or whatever, but I feel like there's less of it now. But I will say, eating way more plant-based foods is a really, really good thing. Personally, that would be like part of my nutritional philosophy, to like go more plant-based. And I just think in general, if people still wanted to have eggs or fish or meat in their diet, just adding more plants in any case is just a super good thing. But the flip side of that is, so I know, Simon, you asked me some really good questions. One of your questions was about soy. Can you have too much? You can have too much of anything. Like, you can develop an intolerance or an allergy to a food, any food, because you have too much of it. So a lot of times people develop an intolerance to eggs when they're having tons of eggs. But it could be anything. It's just your body's way of saying, do you know what, I've had enough of trying to digest this and absorb this. So it's not uncommon that when people do have symptoms and they go and are properly tested, the question would be, well, have you been eating a lot of this particular type of thing? And it would be yes, and that's not unusual.
So the question was a lot more because when we first went to vegetarianism or to become vegan, there's a lot of stuff in the press about there's cancer risk, particularly more so for women. Is it estrogen from soya?
Yeah, maybe, but I think that does depend on the quality and the source. So what I was going to tell you about is, when I did my master's, I was so surprised. I didn't know anything about this. In fact, I don't think a lot of people do. There is more deforestation from soy farming than anything else.
Yeah, it's actually, that's one of the reasons why, because that's something that I first read about probably about 10 years ago, maybe 14 years ago. One of the major reasons, I used to be a vegetarian, and I was a vegetarian for a very, very long time, and I used to live on soy. And then I started to do a little bit more reading and research, and I was absolutely devastated about how much deforestation was directly caused by the soy industry. But then also reading more and more about, and as Simon said, the amount of estrogen, obviously that's inherent in soy, but obviously depending on the volume that you consume, then that, has a knock-on effect. But also, like anything, there's so much variability in quality control between different companies with those products. And that's the other thing that you don't really know about.
And also, you'd have to have a study that really looked into, because a lot of soy products are fed to cattle, and that's what they're bulked out on now. So I'm taking a bit of an educated guess here. Imagine that anybody consuming those types of cheaply produced mass animal products would have more of an estrogen effect or problem than from like a soy milk or yogurt, for example, because of the way that it's going through the animal and affecting and changing their systems and a hormonal response, etc. And then we consume it. I would think that consuming soy products from a good source, and I have soy milk, amongst other things, but too much of anything will potentially have an effect. So and it just really depends on the human as well, because some people will have really, really limited tolerance to soy or additional estrogen, and some will just have be able to have tons and tons and tons of it.
I think there's also, now we're at a point where there's so much more potential variety for vegan and vegetarian supplementation. So when I was vegetarian, and I mean, I started that when I was 6. and I stopped being a vegetarian when I was 18. And in that time, there were like, maybe there was like one brand that did vegetarian alternatives, you know, like the original veggie burgers and stuff like that. And they were horrific. They tasted like absolute crap. Who even knows what was in them? They were absolutely disgusting. But that was it. And it was that or tofu. And that was all you could have. Those were the alternatives. There was nothing else. Now there's endless amount of choice, and people put a lot of effort into, you know, designing and developing these products. Of course, they come with their own side effects of being heavily laden with lots of, I suppose, ingredients that aren't necessarily ideal. But you're not limited to only consuming soy. And I guess my point was, back in the day, if you were a vegetarian, you probably had a lot of soy because that was all there really was. If you didn't have the other stuff, does that make sense? Whereas now you've got the nut milks, you've got oat milk, there's so many other things.
Could I ask a question then? Is it okay if I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because I have soy milk. I don't have any, I've got an intolerance to dairy and gluten and a very sensitive digestive system. But I have soy milk because it's my preferred taste. It's the milk that I prefer the taste of. But would you recommend maybe sort of coming off that and having an alternative non-dairy milk maybe once a month or something?
No, if it works for you, honestly, just like stay with it. It's usually fortified, the stuff that you buy, which is super important because
Okay.
for a lot of people, certain things which we'll go through are fortified in this country because we did or potentially do have deficiency issues. So everybody knows, you know, you get folic in bread, for example, because as a nation we were really, really lacking in that. And
right, okay.
And so because you don't, like, I've not had any dairy for 10 years, and it is important to try and look at where you're getting certain things or what you might be missing, and probably you know, if you're quite in tune with your body and how you feel, you know if something's off. And usually if you just have a look at the last couple of weeks of what you might have changed in your diet or whatever, you might think, oh, that's because I haven't been having X, Y, or Z. It's a really useful thing to do anyway, to monitor if you're changing, and we change through seasons. But I think what is good, if you wanted to stick with soy and that works for you, that's great. But it's super easy to make your own nut milk, and you can make it to the consistency that you want. It's really like low effort.
Oh, wow.
It's cheap. It's really cheap, and honestly, it tastes like incredible. If you want to put it on, you know, like granola or grain-free granola, or in coffee and stuff like that, it's really, really nice. And
that's the only thing in coffee. It tends to, or in hot drinks, it tends to, like, soy milk tends to curdle.
Yeah. So the nut stuff that you make yourself doesn't.
Okay, cool.
And Katie will tell you, because we had this conversation, the best milk for not curdling in your coffee is oat. But again, you'd have to make sure that the gluten issue isn't there.
Yeah, it's strange because it doesn't tend to be, it's a really strange thing to say, but it's not so much the gluten, it's just wheat itself.
Okay.
So any sort of wheat-based products, it upsets me. And not only does it kind of, I don't want to sort of take over the talk, but it doesn't just upset my digestive system, it can give me quite a foggy, my brain feels quite foggy, and I just generally all over don't feel very well.
So there's a lot of research about there used to only be like a really few, like a low percentage of people in the UK who were gluten intolerant. What happened was farming changed, no shock. This is the story across the board. Yeah. Farmers want to make more for less money, and they want to dissuade bugs, etc., from eating their crops. So they changed the structure of the crop to make it less tasty for the bugs and stuff in the fields. And how they did that was changing the protein in the kernel, the spiky bit that you see on the edge on the end of the crop. And that, as a result, has really upset like masses of people. And it's just this change of protein. So again, it's more about where your product comes from. Like if you had your own field and you were growing your own crop and you knew that it hadn't been altered and it was a bit more old school, probably going back like 80 years, then you might find you'd be okay on that. But in terms of like an oat milk, going back to what we were talking about, I've had a lot of clients who've tried that and been okay on it. So it is like a trial and error. But if you want something nice to try for your coffee and like granola or grain-free granola or whatever, making your own almond milk is like really nice and so good for you.
Yeah.
And all you do is soak almonds overnight, throw away the dirty water, stick them in a blender with clean water and blend them for like 3-4 minutes, and then you get a milk bag and it's like milking a cow, and you are left with the pulp which you can dry out and bake with, and then you just bottle up the whatever nut you decide. You can actually put like when you're blending, just like one date like really sweetens it and makes it really tasty, just one date in the whole mixture. And just be mindful that because it's got no salt or additives, the preserving, like the shelf life of it will be less.
Okay.
So you can just kind of make enough for the next 2 to 3 days, and if it's refrigerated, it's fine. But that's like it's so good for you, and that would be a good option.
Okay, thank you.
Katie, have you got can you do a screen share?
I can indeed.
And we'll just have a look. So I wanted to make sure that when I'm looking through things, they're like pretty reputable sites. So I can get Katie to post this on. I don't know how you do that on the Facebook group, or just I can send it to you guys. Okay. I had a look at reference intakes, and basically the average is 50 grams per day of protein that you need. So I thought we'd start with this, because then we can look at where do veggies and vegans get their protein from, or if you want to try and just eat a little bit less animal and be a bit more plant-based, this is what you can go for. But actually for women it's 45 grams a day, and for men it's 55, which is really, really nothing. So in general, we eat way too much protein, and we're kind of conditioned to think that we need protein at every meal. And even if you're an Olympic athlete, you don't necessarily need to add tons more to your diet. So I think one of Simon's questions was about how much do you need? Well, the average person, we're not talking about someone who does CrossFit, but the average person, it's 45 grams for women and 55 for men. And I've got a little picture here to show you what that looks like. If you think, everybody, even if you're veggie or not, if you think about a chicken breast, then something that would fit just over the palm of your hand is what you need per day. Now, if you eat more than that, the body doesn't store it. So it'll just get rid of what it doesn't want as waste. So out of all the macronutrients, it doesn't store protein. And it's not saying that obviously you only have one of these things. Like you're not going to eat like 8 eggs on one particular day. Well, you might.
I am all about having that 14 tablespoons of peanut butter a day, though.
Yeah, just have that all at the start of the day. In fact, that would be a challenge that I think you could meet, because it's that dry in the end that you'll be like chomping on it after about the 4th spoonful. Like, my favorite activity with the dogs is to give it them on my finger and put it in the roof of their mouth. And for ages, they're like, they can't get it out, can't get rid of it. Anyway, that's not about my weirdness. So I thought I would just let you know that. Then I had a look at Precision Nutrition's, like one of their guides about workout nutrition, because I like what they say. They're always really balanced in their articles. Like, they never will say, this is the only way and this is all you must do and you must live like this. They'll say, this research says this, but also this research says that. So the link's on there so you can see the whole article, but it's talking about protein and the benefits during and after. Well, actually, it talks about all the macronutrients during, before and after training. So you know, we know that protein has some kind of an association with increasing muscle, maintaining muscle. Predominantly, protein will keep you full for longer. It may, and I've like where we say can or may, because nothing is definitive and it does depend on the individual. And for every piece of research you find that says one thing, you'll find 10 that like contradict. Can you scroll down a little bit, Katie?
Yep.
Just to whether, just keep going down that bit. So these are kind of like protein, and if we're looking at vegetarian and veganism in particular, we're going to look at why we probably need to assess if we've got a good balanced diet. So these are the reasons why protein might be useful before exercise. And the amino acid part on the third one is probably the most interesting area. It's really researched quite a lot. So then I found them, because there's a lot of people that have protein shakes, talk about protein shakes, and it used to be like the thing that you had to have after training. But now, if you read and look at the research, what they say is probably doesn't matter at what time of the day that you have protein. As long as you're having it, it's going to do its job, whether that's before or after. And maybe even if you just had one meal a day, which was really good source of protein, then that would be okay, even if you are training intensively. So I think we need to get out of the mindset that we have to have 3 set meals with protein and we must have a protein shake after training, because it's not necessarily needed. Personally, I can't stomach it. I can't have something like that straight after training. It makes my stomach turn. But if you tolerate it and you're in a rush and you're going to work, for example, it might be a good option. But I think they're very expensive, and you'll read in this article that as long as you're having protein, it's probably as good from a real source as a protein shake. So just save money and just have real food without all the crap in it as well. And some of them are really, really high in sugar.
Sorry, Judy, could I just ask, going back to sort of the 50, 55 grams, I've read, I know it's different for everybody, but when you're looking at people who do a lot of training, they're saying one gram per pound of body weight.
0.75, but honestly, you don't even need to go down that route, because if you're having 3 balanced meals a day with protein, you'll be getting way more protein than you would need, even if you were going to go off and do a Ironman or something. So I wouldn't, like, it's quite a lot of exercise science, like Katie said last week, is super old. Like, and all of the people that are referenced in work, particularly when you're reading things online, are from really, really old sources. But now all the newer research is basically saying, like, just try and eat balanced meals and think more about, you'll see in a minute, that you're getting the right nutrients and the right amino acids. I wouldn't waste time trying to calculate, this is my body weight and this is what I need, because in the UK, in the West, we eat way more protein than we need.
Okay,
and
thank you.
There's loads of people now. I mean, Katie's kind of like, I don't really trust it, because you know, a lot of athletes are sponsored to say certain things and show a message and sell a way of life type thing. But there's loads of people now, and I mean like big stacked athletic looking, ripped individuals that are vegan. So all this about, oh, you can't.
Steroids.
Yeah, well, maybe steroids, but yeah, that's okay. But yeah, I think that you can be healthy, but it's just more difficult, and you must make sure that you're rotating your foods to make sure that you're getting everything.
I think that's the main roadblock, isn't it, Jill? Is so much information out there about protein and protein sources and grams of protein, all that is really designed for omnivores.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to understand what that would look like as a vegetarian, and especially as a vegan, because the minute you cut out kind of the dairy and the eggs and the fish side of things, then the sources that people just would recognize immediately as a protein. I think that's like just it's a knowledge thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it makes it harder to kind of conceptualize, well, what would that amount of protein actually look like as a vegan?
I think also it's not just a knowledge thing. Like, I have a lot of knowledge about nutrition, but do I live my life like that? Am I a lazy person? Am I not doing what I need to do? Do I not take my own advice? Of course, because we're human, and we go through phases where we're on or we're off, or you're rushing, you're busy. We've got loads of mums and families at CrossFit Lutterworth. If I've said this to Katie last week, just solve the problem. Sell your kids on the internet, get yourself a private chef, have a personal trainer, have somebody with you at all times to do all your body work, every day, and you're fine. You've solved your problem. Someone does your shopping and your cooking and trains you and looks after you and all the rest of it, then that's great. It's not, I think, having the knowledge is one thing, and loads of people maybe don't or are confused, but you just have to give yourself a break and think, okay, and I know a good task that Katie and I, because I'm accountable to her now because of this lockdown has thrown me all over the place, and she's accountable for me now, and it's just communicating, and like, lists are great.
Yeah.
The night before bed, sit down and go, what have I got in the kitchen? What am I eating for my 3 meals tomorrow? And you are so ahead of the game by doing that and knowing what you're going to have. And, if you come off the list and things happen and life happens, that doesn't matter. Every day, if you can do that and get into the habit before bed, just jotting it down, you are doing yourself a massive, massive favor. And particularly with vegans, maybe somebody's new to this or wants to try this, I think that's really important to make sure that you are getting everything that you need, and you'll see the gaps rather than just opening the cupboards or the fridge and thinking, what I'm going to have, I'll just have that, and maybe not getting all the nutrients that you need.
I think it's just trying to match that 1 gram per pound. That's the bit that was throwing me then.
Oh, honestly,
150, 160 grams a day.
Yeah, I think that's quite old research, and if we actually eat so much meat-based protein now in the West that even the NHS are advising that you cut your consumption down. So all of your processed meats, like sausages and salty bacon and cured meats and all that, and whatever they put in pies and all the rest of it, they're definitely saying, and that's for like bowel health. But in general, most health professionals now will be pushing towards a more plant-based diet. So yeah, the whole thing about grams, honestly, unless you're specifically bulking up, like if you were a boxer that needed to bulk up for weight reasons, or there's some, then it will keep you fuller. But again, remember, you can only tolerate, and it's quite individual, at each sitting a certain amount of grams. So if you were to have like 4 protein shakes in order to try and get as much in as you need, most of that, I would say 75% of it would just be expelled as waste anyway. So some of these protein products have like 40 grams worth of protein per sitting, and maybe you can only absorb 14 of those. So the rest is just a complete waste of money, literally a waste. So just like eat regularly and more, make sure that you're getting some of the things here. So if we just scroll down a little bit more, Katie. So iron here, essential for the production of red blood cells. So vegans can have high iron, but there's 2 types of iron. I should have put this on here, I can add it. Hem or Heme and non-Hem or non-Heme. So Hem comes from the animal and non comes from the plant. And both have a role and both are important. And it's much easier for the carnivore to eat lots of Heme, which is really, really good for iron. This was what my thesis was about in the end, like a fatigue study for women who were premenopausal, but if they were getting Heme and non-Heme balanced, and could that reduce feelings of fatigue? Essentially, just eat a better diet and you'll feel less tired, is the conclusion. So there are some examples there, and this is not just for vegans and vegetarians, it's everybody. So you can swap things, you can add things in. So rather than having eggs or meat, poultry, etc., you could have some of these options. And then we've got, if we scroll down just that little image, you might not be able to read this on your screen, but you can see it when you get it sent through. There's some examples of good iron sources here, vegan iron sources. So again, I would suggest trying to have at least 1 per meal of a good non-Heme iron source, because you need to try and consume more of the non-Heme as well. So that's there.
Prune juice, and you'll be regular. Brilliant.
Hey?
Said there's prune juice on there, so you'll be fortified and regular.
Yeah, don't have too much of that, particularly before training. So again, amino acids, and this is probably the most relevant for today's chat. So I put a little link on there so you can read the whole article. Depending on what you read on the internet, it's so funny. I was reading today and they were like, oh, there's this many amino acids, there's that many, and there was loads of different numbers. I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's 20. So 9 of these you have to consume regularly because your body can't produce them. So 11 are non-essential, and you can make those. So obviously we've got meat on here: eggs, tofu, soy, buckwheat, quinoa for the vegans and veggies. Why do we need amino acids? Well, they're compounds that combine to make proteins. So when you eat that, your digestive system breaks down the protein into amino acids, and then they go on their merry way around your body for various different reasons. We are interested, if you look a little bit further down, they build muscle, super important, cause chemical reactions in the body, transport nutrients, prevent illness, carry out other functions. Deficiency in amino acids, so this is where our vegans and vegetarians need to be a little bit more careful. Decreased immunity, digestive problems, depression, fertility issues, lower mental alertness, slowed growth in children, and other health issues. Now on that link, if you want to know about each individual amino acid, like if you read that before bed, you would definitely sleep well. It breaks down each one, so you can read about each one. The branched chain amino acids, which is the usual, like the spiel that they put on protein powders to say BCAA is good as BCAAs. Actually, there's BCAAs in some of those Nocco drinks, isn't there?
Yep.
Yeah. Be interested to know which ones actually, because I like those Nocco drinks. But
do you want me to go find one? Hang on.
Yeah, just have a look and see if they are these ones, because that would be a good supplement recommendation. So always try and eat real food, but in certain products that we know are quite clean, and the CrossFit community usually endorse more clean-based, eat well, eat real food type messages. So Let's just have a look and see if they're.
We have L-leucine, L-valine, L-isoleucine.
Yeah, they're the 3 that we really need.
And there we go.
Brill. There you go. Just don't eat real food. Just drink these all day.
Knockos.
So yeah, if you think you're lacking, or you think that because of the additional training, for example, that would be, like I said, I don't really endorse supplements. I think try in the first instance to get real stuff in, but that would be a good option. I personally, and it might be psychosomatic, always feel good after one of those, but maybe also because I feel like it's a bit of a naughty treat.
Yeah.
Anyway, who cares? Makes you feel good.
I mean, I have from, what's the company? I have plain BCAAs as a powder.
Yeah.
That have those 3 in there. Might even be one more. And I add that to just squash or just plain water after workout, and the positive impact that has, because that doesn't have caffeine in it or anything. So I've kind of, I know that it's just the BCAAs. There's literally nothing else in there. And I notice a difference in my recovery. My DOMs are never quite so bad. I recover better for sure when I've had those.
Yeah. And also, if like our nutrient availability isn't great in food, so let's, you know, if, like I said earlier, if you live on your own farm, you grow your own stuff, you know where everything's coming from, you know that there's no chemicals, blah 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 blah, you know it's not going into some oxygen starved storage area of a supermarket for months on end, you know it hasn't been modified genetically to look or seem perfect shape or color or something like that. If you know that the nutrients are good from your foods, which you might notice when you go on holiday to some of, like, particularly like European real coastal town places that still have fruit and veg shops and everything's only seasonal and that kind of thing, then great. But if not, and you think, do you know what, I feel like maybe I'm not eating that well at the minute, then having a supplement is okay. So on this little diagram here, so just to let you know that vegetables have amino acids. So there's some examples there, and it shows you. So for example, broccoli and pinto beans at the bottom are doing pretty well. And if you're looking at specifics that you think you might not be getting enough of, you know, there's a little chart there. I don't expect people to follow this and try and work out exactly what they want, but I just thought it's quite useful for people to see that you can get these things from veggies.
Helpful though, isn't it? Because that gives you an idea of, if you wanted to try to make sure that you were getting enough of these things, to have a list of certain foods that you know are a little bit higher in that, and to have them a bit more regularly. That ticks that box, doesn't it?
You could have a little like list of maybe 8 things and just know these are the like kings of nutrient, and I'm going to make sure I'm having those in my week, and just keep rotating things around. So this one, I like the next chart a little bit better, and whilst it's not vegan, it's got vegan and veggie things on there, and it lists them, and it just tells you basically eggs are just great for everything. Soy protein's on there, so answering Simon's question, probably if you have like 3 or 4 litres a day, you might be overdoing it, but if you're having a little bit on cereal in the morning or in your coffee and whatever, then at least you're getting these amino acids. And then you've got sesame and peanuts, mustard seeds, peanuts keep coming up as well, winged bean, chia seeds.
Chia seeds are great.
Yep.
I'd say.
Yeah, so that might be useful for vegans and veggies, just thinking right out of those things I can add, like there's 4 things there, 5 things there that I can add. And then vitamin B12 is kind of coming up more in the nutrition world now, and I'm feeling there's like some knowledge somewhere that this is what we're becoming quite deficient in. So healthy blood, really, really important when you're training. Healthy nervous system And again, if we're looking at central nervous system, it's so underappreciated. I don't know, Katie will know more about this, but particularly when you're doing Olympic lifting and like strength-based programs, you have got to be really aware of your central nervous system, because sometimes you can walk away from training thinking, don't really feel like we went mad today. It's all like quite calm, particularly if you've got long rest periods in between lifts. And then, but what you're doing to your central nervous system is really frying it out. I don't know, Katie, if you want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, things that it's usually the things that we do in sessions where you look at the board, you're like, oh, well, that doesn't look like it's going to be that much, but it's what we're doing to the central nervous system itself is, you know, as Jill says, absolutely fried. Strongman stuff's a really good example of that. You know, in the strongman session, we do heavy weights, very, very short amount of time, really long rest, but you are going to have effed up your central nervous system for ages. You're going to need to eat loads of food. You're going to need to rest loads because you've got a lot of recovering to do, even though it doesn't feel, you know, you didn't do an hour and a half of unrelenting work. So different types of work will obviously tax you in different ways. So yeah, 100%. Not, I think a lot of people will walk away from a session and not understand the real need to focus on the recovery for your brain, your body, the central nervous system, the whole package.
And this is something with CrossFit, and the people like at CrossFit HQ are very good at informing you about this, but you probably need to have some research and do it and read it. But you know, you cannot keep beasting CrossFit. And I've said to Katie, hopefully my friend Marty will come on and have a bit of a chat about overtraining in particular and how that looks and what happens to you. And there's a lot of people, and not just in CrossFit Lustworth, but everywhere, that think, yeah, I can just keep going. I just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. And you're mixing up so many different styles of training. And it's not like it's not like just doing swim training, for example, where you're just working in one plane almost, and you're working in a specific way. Even if sometimes you're doing sprints or sometimes you're doing longer distances, it's still just swimming. Whereas CrossFit is like gymnastics, central nervous system fryers, heavy lifts, Olympic lifting, some endurance, and you're doing all these different things all the time, and it's all mixing up, and that's why it's effective. But recovery is everything. And one of the things that is coming out with B12 is that not just general population, but training population are probably lacking in B12. So again, good food sources are everything, but they're starting to fortify it in everything. And when they start to fortify, there's an issue. Marmite or Vegemite or whatever is one of those things that literally is Marmite. You love it or you hate it, but it's really, really high, and also high in iron. So it's just a win. It's just a winner. You'll find in the soy brand I've got at the moment, can't remember the name of it, but it's fortified as well. And if you're not having dairy, for example, it's useful just to read that and see what it's fortified in, because it could be doing you some favors. So calcium we've got there as well. We all know why we need calcium, but that's something that with dairy going out the window, you've got to be careful. But seeds and pulses, in the UK, calcium is added to white and brown flour by law. So there you go. And then again, dried fruit, obviously consider when you're having dried fruit, because it's super, super high in fructose. And then we've got vitamin D. So at the moment, we're all getting loads, which is incredible. And if you need to take a supplement for vegans, just at the bottom there, it says make sure that you know it's not from an animal origin. So the really good one, any supplements, I like Solgar. I think they might be American, I'm not sure, Katie, but
Not sure.
they're vegan for sure. Everything that they do is vegan, and it's really quite clean. It's a good brand. So it's more expensive than something you might buy in Boots or whatever, or Holland & Barrett, but it's a really good brand. So, and they do, I've got it downstairs, they do like a really, really high strength vitamin D in a like squeezy thing. And it's got like a slight orange taste. You just go like that. And in the winter, for example, it's an easy way to get your vitamin D in. Again, you'll find products where it's fortified. And then I know Simon asked about recipes or what to have for lunch. I really, really like Deliciously Ella. I have the app, but I will say sometimes her stuff is a bit complex. You know, have you got the time? So I had a look, and Peter advise a few different apps here. But again, it goes back to lists. It's not easy as a nutritionist speaking generally to people, because I would like to know as an individual, like, what are you really good at? What's working well? So we do a dietary analysis. What are you kind of struggling on a little bit? What are your goals? What's your lifestyle? How old are you? Blah, blah, blah. And then you can start having a look at, right, what do we need to be putting into the diet? And the list thing is great for that, because if you now go away and say, right, I know that I'm lacking in this, this, and this, you can have that added to your list to make sure you're going to shop for it and then consume it. I mean, Simon, I don't know, were you asking about lunches because it's like a meal that you struggle with, or? Is he there?
Yeah, he's there. He's just muted himself.
Sorry. It's just it's just trying to get the variety, really.
Yeah, if you want, Simon, and you're like, yeah, you know, because it does get a bit tedious, and you're thinking, I don't know how to include these things. I'd maybe go away and have a look at some of this stuff and think, what are you getting? Because it's useful, like as an exercise, just think, actually, I have quite a lot of these things quite often. And then maybe see what you might be lacking. And if you want to get in touch, you know, on the little group we've got thing, and just say, can I have some ideas for this or this? I'll try and signpost you to that. But everyone's preference is like different, isn't it?
Yeah.
What they like, but I can help you and have a look. And if you say, I think I'm okay, I'm having all these things, but I'm not having these things. So maybe just 2 lists to start. Like, I know I'm getting all of this, but these are the things I need to include, and then we can have a delve into what might be nice recipes for you.
I think, you know, a question to always ask yourself, if in terms of, am I getting enough of X, Y, or Z? If we understand the roles that kind of very basically carbs, fats, and proteins play in our bodies and what they do for us, then you can kind of ask yourself how you feel a lot of the time, and that can give you a bit of an idea if you're having enough. Because I think you're probably thinking now, oh, but I need to have 160 grams of protein. This thing now says I really only need 55. You know, which one is it? Jill will say, and which is very true, it's everybody's a little bit different. That you know, the 55 is a kind of a guideline for guys. If you feel like that you have good recovery, that your muscle soreness isn't kind of extreme in any way, unless we've done something crazy extreme, you know, if you've got the energy levels, if you know, so there are questions, and you know, Jill, maybe you could give some more specifics there to help, but there are questions you can ask yourself. And if the answer is no, actually, yeah, that, you know, I've got the energy, my muscles feel okay, I feel like I can train well the next day, I don't have brain fog, I wake up easy without caffeine, you know, all these things, then, you know, for the most part, apart from a few bits and pieces, you're probably doing okay. And then, as Jill said before, it just depends what your goals are. You know, if you want to bulk up and get much bigger muscularly, then we'd need to look at something a little bit different. And then how do you do that as a vegan is the trick. Because as you said, there's just not a huge amount of variety of pure protein sources, right? I can't just say to you, go have a steak.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, okay, go have a handful of pinto beans and a couple tablespoons of peanut butter, and then we'll see where you're at. So it is, you know, I think that's, for me personally, having been a vegetarian and now being an omnivore and understanding a little bit about, well, when I was a vegetarian, I ate far too many carbs and yeah, too much cheese. But
that's what's quite, obviously, having listened to, well, I came for the talk about the carbs, and then obviously learning today about we don't need as much protein.
what does that leave you?
Yeah, it's then I'm thinking, because I already tried to cut down on the carbs, so I was having too many carbs. But then you're hungry, so you think, okay, well, lots of protein, lots of nuts, and then you think, well, I'm not having.
You can't really win. You can't really win that battle, because
Yeah.
if you're vegan or veggie, then your protein choices are going to probably be carbs.
Yeah.
You know, so you're in terms of weight management, Simon. Like, you know, it's not that you're trying to lose weight, I'm guessing, and
No.
So I wouldn't worry about it. If you're choosing the right types of carbs, and they're fibrous and they're healthy and they've got, you know, nutrient value, they're nutrient rich, then it's okay.
And don't forget, fats play a huge role in energy, and they're more satiating and they're higher in calories. So, you know, I would suggest, and again, please don't, you know, this is Jill's bag, but, you know, especially if you don't have any weight loss needs, that you can probably help appetite wise and energy wise by adding a little bit more fats to your diet, especially with good healthy vegetable
plant-based fats. Yeah, you're going to be getting your amino acids from those plant-based fats as well,
because fats are not the enemy. You know, you can't be low carb and a vegetarian and low fat. You'll just shrivel up and die.
Yeah. Eventually. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, honestly, Simon, make 2 lists and send them like what you think you're good at and what you think you might need to include, and I'll have a look at it, and then we can like have a look at you know, what you're currently having for your meals, and maybe what could be a better choice.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I think Simon had also brought up a really good point, which is, you know, before he switched to kind of vegetarian veganism, he's trying to just eat more whole foods. Anyway, and I think and I think I mentioned this in the last one, that, well, hang on a second. When you know, a lot of people, because there's so many ready-made meals, vegan meals, vegetarian meals, vegan fake hamburgers and hot dogs, sausages, and, you know, all these things, but that's not good quality whole foods. That all of a sudden we're being introduced to. So yes, that it'll be advertised as, but this is a protein, so it's got this much protein in it, and that's what vegetarians and vegans think they need more of. So you'll go and have those things, but they're not actually necessarily adding as much value to your health as you'd like to think, because there's going to be a bajillion ingredients, and who knows like what's in there to make it palatable. So
yeah, they'll be messing with your gut microbiome, because the more bad, nasty things and additives, etc., that are in these foods, to try and this is the surprising thing, to try and make them taste like meat products or whatever, they'll be messing around with those bad bacteria, and the more bad bacteria you have, they fight with the good bacteria. So we want to try and encourage more and more and more good bacteria in your gut microbiome.
And again, I think that's where, again, we're left with that seeming lack of variety, because it's easy to go and say, right, well, I'm going to have my fake vegan meatballs this night, and I'm going to have my fake vegan chicken strip fajitas this night, and then so you feel like you're having a varied diet, but actually what you're doing is adding so much chemical content, you're not really having whole foods anymore. So if we strip all that away, then, you know, you are left, I think, probably feeling like, well, I've got beans, tofu, beans, lentils, beans, where else can I get? So yeah, it just takes, it is effort intensive, I'd say, to sit down, look at the lists of foods that, and this is what Jill has done here on this sheet, which I'll send to everybody, I'll post up on the page, and you can look up and you say, right, well, these are good sources of these things. Here's my list. Let's mix those together now and make some different meal ideas, bearing in mind that, of course, all the vegetables that you possibly want, every color of the rainbow, and then make your own sauces, tomato based. Spices play such a huge role in you know, creating that variety, playing around, you know, experimenting with spices you've never had before. Coconut milk, to make creamy bases. Then you've got tomato bases. So straight away, you've got so much potential variety there. It's an exercise that I think you just need to kind of sit down and do.
I always say to people, don't be too hard on yourself as well. Like when you implement changes, if you added one new recipe to your repertoire every week, just one recipe, like you could have a recipe night. Thursday night is recipe night. You can bulk cook and freeze it and have stuff. But if you just add one new thing a week, you think about that like over the course of 6 months or a year. And we are creatures of habit. There's only certain things that we have and keep rotating. You know, we're not like super adventurous. It just came to me that Melissa Hemsley, the sisters who do loads of cooking things, but Melissa Hemsley often posts like really nice and quite simple veggie and vegan options, and she did a meatballs one this week, and like even put something on there like, these actually taste really nice, like don't be put off for all the carnivores out there and stuff. So just like having a look, picking someone, thinking, yeah, I can manage that, get your ingredients and just add one new thing.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
By adding one new thing, you're probably, like a lot of people, not you Simon, but a lot of people will be taking one crappy option out because the good thing has come in. So just think, yeah, I'll just do one new thing every week, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Anybody got any questions before I run off to put my roasty out? I'm having a roasty dinner.
No, thank you very much. That was really good. Thank you.
It's like, I think it's going to be good for the people who sometimes like tune in afterwards and like just to have a look at that sheet, because I think understanding that we probably don't need to have as much protein as we're told. It's a whole food marketing thing. You need to eat loads and loads of protein. Keep buying it. Keep buying it. Keep buying it. There's only, you know, people are getting rich from all of
it. It sounds crazy conspiratorial, but you've got to imagine the amount of money in the protein supplement market right now.
Oh God.
You know, so much of all of our information, you have to, as a discerning person, right, discerning individual, you have to take everything you're presented with a pinch of salt until you can understand the production values of what you're being told. And by that I mean you need to understand who is publishing it, who is funding that publishing, and what their potential bias might be, where their research has been done, how big their research groups are. I mean, everything you need to be wary of. Never ever look at any one piece of information and take it as gospel, because that's where a lot of us, I think, get into trouble, where we're like, oh, well, this said this, and it said, oh, well, this said this. How can they both say totally different things? It's like, well, easily, because there's not just one magnanimous person regulating all of this material. We have to do that ourselves, and that puts a lot of pressure on us to actually stop and do a little bit more digging, and then start to put together what we think actually makes the most sense, because that's literally the only option we've got.
Yeah. And like, just always question like, why would I be told that? Why, who's going to gain from that? And just come and ask me, so yeah, cool.
All right, thank you very much for that. That was very good.
Thank you.
Just got to figure out what to eat now.
Well, and if you think of anything afterwards, please reach out to Paula, because it'll take you some time to kind of digest, look through the handout. I'll post that straight on the page now, and then it'll take me a minute to convert the video. Have a look through that, and then if you have any other questions or want some more guidance and advice, then just get in touch with Jill, because it's what she does.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, thank you.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. How was that, Sam?
I'm unmuting myself. Yeah, that was really good. Thank